JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Friday, June 20th, 8:56 a.m. on this biggest ever triple witching options expiration day. Oh my gosh. I sense my sarcasm a little bit. I'm not saying to not pay attention to uh, large volumes of options expiring on a certain day, that can have an impact on the markets. Of course it can, right? But it just makes for great clickbait, right? Because the biggest ever triple witching, um, you know, it's a function of multiple things, right? I mean, option trading and used instruments used to protect and hedge and all that stuff has grown insanely in popularity. So not only have more options being traded, so of course on an option expiration day you'll have more expiring, but the markets are 2.5%, 3% from all-time highs. So the amount, so they go by the notional value, right? So your option contract, 100 contracts, or one contract is 100 shares. So you multiply it, and if it's an Apple, one contract is a lot of notional value, right? So if the call is exercised, or you call, or you let your call exercise, or what have you. So it's more of a lot of it's a function of how high some of these stocks have gone, right? And a lot of the stocks that have the large liquidity and large open interest, the Nvidias, the Teslas, they all have high stock prices. So just a function of that. But anyway, needless to say, so today's the day. We also geopolitical headlines, right? And Wednesday kind of stunk. So we had the Fed meeting Wednesday, and I posted that chart, great chart in Market Watch, because at about 3:30 when I was doing my rant on Wednesday, it almost looked like the same setup was happening on Fed Day. We have the market green, ramp after the Fed statement, presser comes on, ramp when Fed Chair speaks. Actually, a little chop. Then Chair Powell speaks 2:30, ramp, and then he gets off, and we sell, right? And it almost looked like we were going to do that. Thankfully, the market's held. SPY held 597. Well, it didn't hold, closed above it. And then we had the overnight geopolitical tensions. Oh my gosh, is the U.S. going to get involved in Iran? Are we not? It's like uh, it's almost comedic, some of the stuff. And I try to have like a sense of sarcasm and a sense of humor around some things. But you have people on FinTwit who like post like they're going in boots on the ground and to do military conflict. I mean, it's a big decision for someone to push a button and say, okay, all these troops are going in, risking their lives for this, right? And one of them was Bill Ackman. So it's funny if you saw my tweet, you ask Grok, and he posted out what the U.S. should do. Oh, Israel should eliminate Hamas, put them in camps, create a new great glorious place, and the U.S. should bomb Iran. Right? Sorry, don't mean to get into military stuff, but it was kind of funny. So I said, ask Grok to tell me what this sounds like how Genghis Khan would say it, and it's got like hundreds of thousands of views on FinTwit. But anyway, so I just hope, and the best case scenario here is, like I've been saying, Israel does what they have to do to mitigate loss of life, take out the nuclear capabilities, and then we all move on, right? And it sounds like Iran are going to meeting with EU. You have to think something's going to get ratcheted out without the U.S. having to escalate this, because I think that's like a worst case scenario. I mean, worst case scenario is nuclear weapons, right? I mean, we're in the hands of a regime that might be more apt to use them than not, right? So especially in the face of desperation. So, all right, that's enough of that. So, those headlines will still be coming up, but I'm not saying to dismiss those too. But I kind of think we're getting to the point where the markets, baked a lot of that scenarios in, and we can kind of move on. The unfortunate thing is we get into kind of like a news vacuum for the next 6 sessions until the end of June and the end of the second quarter and first half. So you have to think we got trade deals. So I'm sure some trade deals next week. We're going to have tax bill finagling, right? I guess July 4th is the date for the tax bill. So that's 2 weeks from today. And then, we have the tariff deadline, right? It was July 9th, whatever that date is. So a lot of haggling there. And it sounds like the EU is kind of open, or at least, thinking to themselves that they're just going to have a flat 10% tariff or whatever. I don't know if there's a negotiation. Who knows what that plays out. Well, we'll see how things trade here today. Don't forget, it's ex-divvy day on the SPY. So the ex-divvy, I think, was $1.76. So that the SPY closed at 597.25, somewhere in there. It's at 597, 595.67. So my new ranges for today, 595.40 to 604.40, somewhere in there, or 604.25. So I'll be watching those ranges. We break under 595 and change this morning. I might look for some put hedges as QQQ or get some Visa MasterCard puts. But we are gapping here this morning. I think more that Iran is set to a little more open to talks. All right, so that's kind of the overall market. Take a look at yesterday's Wednesday's candle too on the SPY. Just such a tight range despite the Fed meeting. And typically there's volatility. To me, I think a lot is. Whoops. Hang on a second. What did I do there? Whoops. I think a lot of the 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 trading range on Wednesday was because I don't think Fed Chair Powell said anything that was uh, crazier than expectations. Right, his dual mandate, full employment, and normal price stable prices. Right, and he just pretty much reiterated everything besides the stable coin. Right, I talked about some reporter asking about stable coin. Oh my gosh, has the Fed baked this in? What a Bretton Woods or whatever, the big meeting back in the 1920s that determined the fate of mankind's currency and all. It's like that definitely a hurdle to get over, and that'll probably be more conversation as the weeks and months progress. But also, you look on FinTwit, people, oh, Powell doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, you have Peter Schiff saying, he always says if there's inflation, it's good for gold. If there's deflation, it's good for gold. If the Fed raises rates, it's good for gold. If they cut rates, it's good for gold. But I think it's just they're in a good spot. The U.S. is the fund raise 4.25%, 4.5%, where the EU's at 2%. They've cut eight times in a row. So now you have the odds or probability of a rate cut. July went up to like I don't know 20 some percent, and then September. So it's in 40 days. 40. I guess 40 days from today is the first week of July. Is the first. No, excuse me. Is it August? Or maybe it is July. And then you have the next meetings in September. It's now a 60% probability that the Fed's going to cut rates in September. All right, so that's kind of overall market. And then you take a look at the 10-year, just pretty much flat as a pancake on Wednesday. So all good stuff. All right, so now just individual names. Still DELL, a nice move at the open on Wednesday. Continuation all the way up to 1880 in the early morning. I was able to lock some more of my lotto calls in for over 600%, locked some of the Julys in for nearly 100% to cover costs. And now I'm just riding free, right? So here it is, gapping higher. Got a price target upgrade from Evercore. Took the price target from 140, 150. So hopefully that's enough fuel to get it to 120 today. If I can get the rest of my lotto calls out for $2, that's probably what I'm going to do, and I'll just hold the July strikes. I think it's headed to 130 plus. I mean, you take a look at the setup, the pincher. And the fact that it had great earnings and it's still sold off. And I don't know if it was someone just taking off and said, okay, I'm done with my DELL position. I don't know what it was, but needless to say, I think it created an opportunity. All right, so that's DELL. Then later in the day, I added the Roku strikes. I was talking about Iran on Wednesday. I was looking at the Roku July 100s on Monday with that Amazon news, and it was like $1, right? And then they were 90, and then they were 85, and then I just held off, and then I kept watching, and then boom, they're pretty much cut in half. They're on discount, clearance sale, right? So I went and finally got those July strikes. It's been one of those frustrating stocks to watch, but one of these times it's going to really start to gain some momentum. You look at the weekly chart, and I typically don't look at weekly charts too much per se. I'm more of like a daily and 1 minute and things like that. But certainly can make the case that it's headed back to 100 in coming weeks. So especially if the market finds footing, we start to melt towards new all-time highs. I still like this one for upside. And then the stablecoin situation, right? I don't know why I don't have all my charts here. It's I don't know how many years I've been talking about this Visa, MasterCard, and third-party processors being disrupted. And I used to think it was going to be the PayPals, the Venmos, the Blocks of the world. And those still may be it, or be part of it. But now it's like this stablecoin thing. And I mean, if you're a retailer, especially a big box, that your margins are very small, and you have to figure out ways to be more profitable. I mean, the biggest drain on your profit, not the biggest, one of the controllables, obviously your labor, right? So that's more of that's like your variable cost. So you can figure that stuff out. But the other part of it is the processing fees. And it's like one of those things where it's like if someone can come around with a system that allows you to take transactions and you can cut those fees down, either the competitive landscape will help cut those fees on Visa, MasterCard, or replace them, right? So it's just tough, and I'm keep looking at the Visa, MasterCard puts, and they're so much more expensive than they were when I got to the puts last week when that news came out about Walmart and Amazon, that it's tough to play on a risk-reward basis. And you see it dipped all the way down. It's like finding footing. You would think it would be gapping down today. It's down here at 340, despite the names like the Circle, right? Circle IPO, huge name, and right place, right time for them with the stablecoin news and that bill, the Genius bill or whatever. And then, Coin, right? I mean, another one of those names is like Coin going to supplant Visa and MasterCard. So you got to think maybe some of this money gets deployed in some of these names outside of Visa, MasterCard. But rants for other days. Don't be surprised I add some more lottos here today to be a little more aggressive with this triple witching. So headlines, the RHs, the MDBs. RH is up here at 194. I don't disappointing that it was 196 and change right at the Fed statement and just couldn't hold the gains. I mean, it'd be a much better situation here if it was 196 at the open and gap and go. But don't be surprised to get some strikes to play for 200. Reddit's sitting here at 142 in the pre-market. Another name that seems to run right after the open. So still have some freebie 150s. Reddit was a nice trade this week. I might look for some more strikes there. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.